Oh, I'm having a great time. So many people, wonderful people, and then we're out in Sydney a little bit, so it's been great.
Yeah, what's the majority of people sort of want to talk about when you come to
Pokemon. Always Pokemon. Because it's the thing that most people grew up watching, or, they got up early in the morning and then they went to school and talked about the show. It was that kind of phenomenon where everybody was watching it at the same time. And then there were the cards, and then the cards were banned, so it became another thing. And then playing the games, and all of that. It really strikes a chord in people. And even though I've done a million things, everyone wants to talk about Pokemon, and that's fine with me.
Yeah, why do you think it's stuck? It's still relevant all these years later to these people.
Well, I do think that the story is what, I think Pokemon was really a big commercial for the games, but what it actually was a journey that people, you watch the show, and maybe it's the writing because it was funny, maybe it's the colors and the way it was drawn, that it was so simple that you could watch the show and then play it. You could watch it and be the characters and go on that journey with them. It wasn't so, sitting at home watching it and then you go off and do something else. Somehow it was real. And I think, too, the characters had a lot of emotion that you don't normally get in a cartoon. So many moments that, setting Butter free, people cried. We all cry when we think about it. The making friends and those battles, we all have that in our daily lives of taking a test or working together on a project, all of those things that you have to achieve, and you have to learn how to work with others and go after your goals at the same time. And I think we all learned a lot about that from the show. So somehow it kind of, or it was an escape for people. So many people have told me about dealing with bullies or their parents' divorce and coming and watching the show and being able to escape into that. So it was real, and yet it was unreal enough that you could get away from your other problems.
Yeah, and I think because we briefly had a chat before you came down to Australia, and you were mentioning there was some, I guess, underlying, deeper tones that a lot of people connected to, and things you might not think about in terms of Ash's father not being around,
right? That
kind of thing. Do you get a lot of those sort of comments when people meet you out?
Not so much like that, because I think a lot of times when we attach ourselves to something that becomes so meaningful in our lives, we often don't tend to really look at the underlying. So nobody says, I related to Ash because I didn't have a dad. No one has ever said that to me. But people always want to know where the dad was, who the dad was. But no one has ever said I related to that. I related to the show because I had a single mom. No one has said that to me. But most people have said about how they found strength watching the show. They learned how to be a better person, maybe, or they were able to just forget about their troubles and just be on this happy journey. More like that.
Yeah, so it obviously stuck with a lot of people because it's different in those ways. How was it for you working on the show? How was it different?
Well, for me it was a great, in a sense, escape, but at the same time being more myself, that I could be a 10-year-old boy. And I don't do many battles in my real life, so to be able to go, and I took stage combat, so I was using my stage combat skills without actually having to swing a sword or anything, but I could use that, and the breath control that I used with stage combat I use in my voice fighting. Also, I learned a lot about the power of positivity, because Ash never would say, he wouldn't say, we'll never make it. He says, how do we get out of this? What do we do now? And he's always looking for the solution, where I think I do that in my real life, but I didn't realize it until I had to be that character for 8 years and find the positive in places. That taught me a lot, actually.
Yeah, and how did, I guess, another show that you were, quite well known for is being April in the Ninja Turtles.
Right.
How did it sort of compare to that experience?
Well, in one way, technically, for when you're dubbing something, we go one person at a time in the booth. So it's lonely in that sense, and you're all in your own head. But with Ninja Turtles, we were all in the booth together, so it was more like doing a radio play, or a play, really. And we could interact off one another. Although they didn't really want you to improvise, we still were working off the energy of each other. So that was more of a real team effort. And it was more kind of real and in the moment, rather than Pokemon, you're watching the show, and then you're figuring out the lines in your head and working off the picture. So it's different that way. April O'Neil is such an iconic character that there's a different responsibility to be her than playing Ash, who was relatively unknown. April didn't get to do a lot in the show as far as being really active or positive. In the beginning, she was a strong character, but she was so scared, from the nanobots coming and ending up in that cave and meeting the turtles. So she was almost like a side character, whereas Ash was right in the middle of it. And although he was the main character, he was with everyone else, so they were a team like that. She was much more on the side in a way. So playing Ash was a little more rewarding.